Hello and welcome to the Amazon Gold Standard Podcast. I'm Robert from Breetly, and this is my podcast. We have Katherine here from Branded, and we're going to be talking about, hi Katherine, about why product development is very important for brands. It can definitely set you apart or bring you down in the eyes of shoppers against competition. So we're definitely going to want to get into that, see what you guys do, how you do it, where you started. Katherine, if you would be able to, just give me, before you go into what Branded does, where you started, how you got here, your experience, so that everyone at home would be able to trust in what you have to say.
Sure, would love to. Hi, I'm Katherine. As Robert said, I'm the marketing director here at Branded. My former background is mainly in big retail brands, and so I've concentrated most of my career outside of management consulting in big brands like Kate Spade and formerly at Nike. So have spent a lot of time in these retailers going through the transition between purely physical stores all the way through e-commerce, navigating omni-channel, and looking at how you think about your brand across all of these consumer touch points. And so that's really been the bulk of my journey prior to joining Branded. So I think I'm in a pretty good position to talk through, how smaller sellers can take those lessons that bigger brands are doing, and how do you navigate in a space where there's obviously a lot of players that have a lot more money and a lot more brand equity than a smaller seller. But of course, there's a lot of things that more nimble sellers can do as well. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Yeah, there's a lot of red tape that might need to be cut through at bigger brands. That if you can just take the lead, move quick, and not have to ask for the right approvals, which can take maybe months. I don't know. I mean, you might get that leg up ahead of, because I mean, every second counts in this industry.
Yeah, definitely.
And so, when did you go to Branded?
I
And
joined
what
Branded.
is Branded? Let everybody know.
Yeah, so I joined Branded about a year ago. I was really excited about the space. Actually, it's almost exactly a year because I started on July 1st last year.
Congrats.
Thank you. So I was looking for something more entrepreneurial. Obviously, coming from a big, big company like Nike, it was a really, really great experience, but I wanted to get a bit more hands-on in the e-commerce space. And I was really intrigued by the business model. I think we all are aware of the aggregator business model at this point. But at that time, I had just really started to hear about the industry, and I thought it was a really interesting idea on how you could take these smaller brands and kind of bring them all together into a platform or a portfolio to run them more effectively and try to grow them into even bigger consumer brands. And so that was why I joined Branded. At Branded, we are an aggregator of sorts. I think we actually don't love that word because I think we would like to think that we add a lot more value other than just putting a bunch of things together. But essentially, that's what we are at Branded. We take these micro brands, what we call challenger brands in house, with the potential to become these global superstar brands. And so I think that's the lens that we use when we do acquisitions, when we think about what brands to take on and how we operate them. It's with a more long-term mindset and long-term investment. So that's just a little bit more about Branded.
So I know that obviously there is a benefit of being able to own these brands, and you take part of the profits on the sales. Great if you're able to grow them. That's the point. But there's other things that go on in the background that a lot of people might not know of what aggregators do and how
Mhm.
they're able to cut costs in order to even increase your margin. So I think maybe something like if you have five different home goods type of brands that manufacture products for the home. And then you're dealing with five different factories. So if you're able to now have all these different products, you sort of bring it down to one factory. Now you have the economies of scale and you're able to bring your costs down even further of what the other, wherever you bought the brands from. And you buy these brands from them. Do they, any ownership stay on or? Or you
Yeah,
take it
actually,
all?
that's one of the more unique things about branded. I think it's becoming more common that aggregators want the founders to stay on for a little bit longer, but from the very beginning, we've really encouraged that. We really strive towards a partnership mentality, and actually, 3 out of the 4 founders that we acquire stay on with us at branded for some period of long-term commitment. So obviously, everyone's deal is a little bit different. Everyone's goals when they're exiting is a bit different. But at
Right.
the end, we've always really valued that, and we love when the founders stay on. And so we have quite a few of the brand founders that have continue to work at Branded.
It's somewhat it's a bit necessary to have previous experience with the company, the people, the relationships to
Yeah,
keep them
absolutely.
going. Definitely necessary. So aside from maybe um, bringing together all these different manufacturers, what other ways outside, maybe things that the general public don't know, how it works as an aggregator, things going on in the background. I don't think you're on the operation side, not necessarily the acquisition side. So from the operation standpoint, how are you able to bring these costs down, and what are the benefits that aggregators have that before the brand gets sold that they don't have?
Yeah, there's a couple of different ways you can kind of tackle that question. And the first one actually is very similar to what you've brought up, but I think it's a slightly different angle. So, as an
Okay.
example, one of our brands, Puracy, we really took a look at their whole manufacturing chain. And actually, because we have the depth of experience in consumer brands and people who've worked at P&G and other really, really big players, we were able to identify things like package size requirements and like hitting a specific floral ounce container within each package, and also tweaking the pricing to match more of like a psychological price point versus others, and then being able to make sure that we were distinguishing between sizes that retailers might want versus sizes that perform better on Amazon versus sizes that might perform better on DTC. And so just things like that where it's like it's about manufacturing and it's about the product portfolio where you're bringing this level of expertise that you as an entrepreneur you just might not have, right? And so I think that that's something that people overlook is like you think, oh, we're just throwing everything together and using 3PL costs to, improve margins. And it's not necessarily only about that type of cost improvement. It's about, taking the actual expertise and digging into a product category like cleaning supplies and better understanding like how you can appeal to your consumer base a bit more and how you can differentiate across channels. So that's just one example of something within a brand that doesn't actually even have to do with any of the other brands in our portfolio necessarily.
And that's one thing you just said is direct to customer, so on your own website, Amazon, and then in retail. So, a couple of aggregators, they just focus on Amazon, right?
Yeah, and I think for us, we understand that a brand is much more than just Amazon. I think all the respect for people who've built these brands on Amazon. Puracy was a brand that started out on Amazon, but there's just so many other consumer touch points that you need to be able to master in order to become a $100 million brand. And we understand that. And I would say that right now, what we're realizing is that we can't prioritize everything for every brand, but we have superstars in our portfolio that we think can really make it there. And what that means is you need that well-rounded approach, right? You can't just have your brand on Amazon. It needs to be a brand that lives on social, a brand that has your own brand website and brand storefront. And that's the only thing actually that will attract retailers to your business as well.
Is that something that, I mean, you're not on the acquisition side, maybe you don't have the answer, but is that something they look for where if you don't have your own website, if you don't sell in stores, we're going to stay away, or you will eat them up, take them, and then put the plan in place to take them across direct to retail or direct to consumer?
No, it's definitely not something we expect all brands to have in place, and it depends on what, part of the entrepreneurial journey is and like how it fits into our portfolio. And so I think every every business is looking at like, how does this brand fit in with, the strategic decisions I'm making? So as an example, we really focus on beauty and personal care, health and nutrition, and home. And so that's our first filter. We know those categories the best. We have relationships in those categories, and we understand the distribution model across all of the different channels for these categories. And we really feel like that's a competitive advantage. And so that's why that's like the first layer of defense when we look at brands to acquire, is that we really stick within our categories. But no, we're really looking for brand potential at the end of the day. So it doesn't need to have a store and like 1 million followers on Instagram at the moment. What we're looking for is that little bit of spark that we think makes it attractive to go into the other channels like DTC and retail.
I got some clients who are not selling in retail stores. Is there any way that, is there any division that, because I know with different companies, thinking of one specifically, that they help Amazon brands, let's say, get into retail. They'll do all the legwork to help build them up internally. So is there anything in Branded's longer term outlook where, you know what, maybe I don't want to just focus on buying brands, but I can, with our connections and our abilities, that we can help other brands and they'll pay us a handsome fee to help. So, just increase your revenue stream.
Yeah.
And still do the same work.
I think at right now, we're not looking to add kind of services to our portfolio. Of course, like I can't predict the future in 5 years from now, but I think there are service providers out there that will do those things and they will help brands. And so I encourage people who are interested in that to take them up on it. But I can't imagine that right now we would aim to provide those types of services outside of the brands in our portfolio.
And with the climate, the economic climate, and just everything in general, focus on your core capabilities, double down on that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's definitely where we're headed, at least for this year, just knowing the macro environment and the challenges that are ahead. So we're really trying to focus on our operations and building our processes and making sure that our own brands are successful.
All right, so let's get into the meat and potatoes here of what this podcast is about today. So we touched it, I guess, was in regards to the products and services you offer. Do you feel like you've covered all of them in what we've spoken about so far, or is there anything that we've missed?
No, I think that's it. I think I definitely wanted to cover the partnership mentality. I think it's really important to stress that at Branded, we're really excited about founders staying on to continue to grow with us,
Right.
and also our strategic categories. So for me, I feel like we talked about that already.
Is there any, have you ever had, are there partners who say, you know what, I want to stay on? I guess that they'll be an employee. They're not going to have any ownership interest at all anymore, assuming. Maybe every deal's different. I don't know.
Yeah, I would say that's not actually necessarily true. Every deal is different at Branded, and we do allow it just depends on the brand and the deal. Like I said, we work with a partnership mentality, and that means that there are owners of brands that are continuing to grow with us. They are employees of Branded or consultants, or have long-term contracts with us that still do have a little bit of skin in the game, as you would say.
Okay, good. All right, so I think everyone's heard about what's going on with different aggregators, but I don't know if you fall within the same bucket, let's say like of a Thrasio. But what's going on in the industry? Where are the trends? What's up? What's going on here?
I think, like everyone's been talking about, the trend is really around consolidation and what you did 2021, like where you put your focus, where you put your resources. I think there's a couple of things, and again, not an acquisition, so I'll talk about it more at a high level, but I think that a lot of aggregators, when raising funding, they have all taken on different models in terms of the financing. And so those who are a bit more levered with a lot more debt are struggling a little bit more than those who had taken funding in more of an equity and debt split that's a bit more advantageous. And so even things like that, which aren't necessarily things that you as an owner would be looking into necessarily when you were selling into an aggregator, these are making a big difference right now, because e-commerce is experiencing it's not a lag, but it's just not the hyper growth that people thought would come after COVID. And so in general, I think that everyone is seeing their portfolios become a lot more difficult to maintain. And depending on how you spent your time and resources in terms of building your organization last year, I think that's what's made the difference in terms of those aggregators that are doing okay and those that are struggling and those that are looking for buyers. And so I think that that's what's really set everyone apart, is like, where did you focus your time in 2021? How prudent were you in the acquisitions that you did? And does your portfolio still make sense now, or did you make some interesting decisions that you wouldn't have made now?
Yeah, that's kind of tough. I mean, people like to go into stores and shop, touch the products. That's the hardest thing on Amazon. You're selling a product, you can't touch it. So your pictures, your product images, your descriptions, everything's got to be spot on. That's the hardest part. But I mean, when COVID hit, and in 2021, that percentage of sales that happened via e-commerce just completely skyrocketed, and in-store sales went down. And then
Right.
I don't know if these bad decisions that have been made by certain, I don't want to use the word aggregator anymore. Can you give me a new word? Because I know you don't like it. But these consolidating Amazon purchasers. So these decisions, if they made a bad choice, were they? You can tell me maybe more. Were they thinking that it was just going to continue? Just e-commerce sales are just going to still go up at the same rate, or do you think that they knew that there would be in 2022 a downturn, but it may, if you were to take that blip out, I mean, e-commerce is still growing at the same rate after COVID now. Well, it's not. New York's about to get hit with a sixth wave, but where do you think they went wrong? Did they think that everything was going to be growing at the same rate, or how did that happen in 2021? The growth of aggregators in 20 and 21.
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone was just overly optimistic that consumer behavior had really made the switch, that if e-commerce penetration was X amount, which was like 10, 15%, whatever it was in 2020, that like we've skipped the phase of needing to grow that extra 5%, that extra 10% at the pace that it was, and we like accelerated and then would continue to grow from there. That people would just be so happy with the e-commerce adoption that they would continue to buy like that, and penetration would continue to go up and basically just skip that area of growth. And what we've basically seen is that in fact it didn't. It's gone back to its original like curve of growth, which is still
Right.
growth. And that's why I think like
Exactly.
we still really believe in the e-commerce industry. It's not like doom and gloom. It's just the hyper growth that people thought would happen, and the skip and the opportunity didn't necessarily turn out the way they thought it would for e-commerce as an industry. I think the other piece in terms of what people didn't expect was just how hard it would actually be to run this many brands and this many disparate brands. Because I think, like what you said earlier in the podcast, you don't actually gain that many efficiencies on the back end if all of your products are different and they're in all these different categories and they have all of these different specificities, regulations, compliance. And so I think that's what really led some astray, or why they're struggling now, is because supply chain wise, I mean, there's a reason why there's a different supply chain for different types of products. And it's not so easy to just throw everything on the same truck and deliver it to a warehouse, right?
And the shipping fees, container fees, everything. That's a nightmare how expensive that's gone.
Yeah,
Do you see
obviously no one anticipated that either, I don't think.
how now, separate aside from the the actual buying of companies, that might have slowed down compared to the way it was. But what about the interest in selling? How has that gone up or come down from what it previously was from, let's say, 2019 to 2021 and now in 22? Are people wanting to sell more and more and more, or are they like holding their cards on their assets?
Yeah. I think it's been about the same. I think there were a couple of people who probably anticipated that the buying spree wouldn't last, and they took their opportunity to sell their businesses in 2021 because they knew that that was going to be the gold rush time period. And so maybe they weren't really ready to sell, but they thought it was a really great opportunity for them. And kudos to them for selling their businesses at a time where they could get really good valuations
Yeah,
because all of these entrepreneurs have just put in so much work. I think that it's great for them that they were able to take advantage of the timing. I think the interest is still there, and unfortunately, the buy side has slowed down so significantly that I can't really even judge kind of what the volume level is right now. We don't
got it.
have like 20 people competing to buy one business, and so it's a bit artificial that we feel like it is slowed down, whereas there actually might be a similar amount of people who are interested in selling their businesses, just not as much competition and not as many buyers.
So I guess that might be a time for Brandon to get a good deal. If the competition isn't there driving the price up, you might be able to sell it at a okay. So what else did we have? I wanted to bring up and find out about, I mean, the industry trends we talked about. I guess the headlines we've also covered, but what kind of problems did you have I mean, nothing's perfect. So what kind of problems have you run into? How did you solve them? I mean, are there problems that you just haven't been able to solve? I mean, you don't have to put that dirty laundry out in the air, but what what kinds of problems have you faced over the years?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely no one's perfect. We've had our share of problems as well. I think like one of the things in one of our earlier brands that we acquired, we didn't really do enough diligence on the supplier relationship. And I think that's also something that's changed a lot over the last year is that there's no more of this we'll close in 20 days type of thing and not do any diligence on your company. I think that time period has also passed. Many companies are doing a good amount of diligence. Like we would not come out in the first meeting saying like we're going to close in 20 days because it's not realistic. Like the businesses really have to be examined. And so I would
That is
say an earlier difficulty was we just not didn't understand the supplier relationship and had some issues in terms of who owned the design and who owned the mold, and we were locked into a design and a supplier that we couldn't really make much change with. Like we couldn't port that to another supplier. And so I think that's a good example of like really doing your diligence up front, and also shows the difficulties in combining suppliers as well, because it's not as easy as just taking all of your manufacturing and putting it in one place. Like there's a lot of rules and regulations and contracting and things that go into that.
well, definitely. We all got to learn from our mistakes. That's a tough one. Oof.
Yeah, for
How
us, I
many
think the
employees do you
benefit
have?
was. Oh, yeah. So we have about 300 employees worldwide, I believe. And I was going to say that the benefit for us in kind of tackling this challenge is that we do have a team in China that works on sourcing and manufacturing. And so, in terms of being able to right size any of the challenges that we come across in that space, we have a local team on the ground. So we have our biggest presences in China, the Philippines, and we're dual headquartered in New York and Paris.
Dual, nice. We're in New York too. So, hey, what's today? Thursday? Thursday. Today's pizza day. If you get some free time, come into the office, have a slice or two.
Well, I'm actually based in Paris. Otherwise, I would love to.
Oh, you're so lucky, never been. Wow. And what kinds of successes? Okay, so we got through some of the issues. What kind of successes? Like, is there even a time where an aggregator will say, okay, now I want to sell the brand? Does that happen?
Like sell one of our own brands that we have.
Yeah, like
I
you
mean, I
bought it, you
wouldn't
built it.
I wouldn't rule it out, although I don't think that in your specific instance we would sell like a very high performing brand. I think that would be a success story that like really showcases the talent of the team and the operational level that we have. And I don't think that that would be a scenario where we would take a really high performing brand, like look at what we've done and then turn around and sell it. I can see scenarios where aggregators right now, and us included, might even look at some of the lower performing brands and think about what we could do there. But mostly I would say from our high performance brands, we wouldn't consider kind of turning around and putting those on the market, just because of all the work that's really gone into it.
Right.
In terms of some of the successes that I'd love to highlight, I think that overall our brands have done really stellar on social media. We really lean into building a community, to building your brand off Amazon through social media, and we've had some really, really great success stories there. Our one brand, Ototo, has hit 10 million likes on TikTok. Um,
Wow.
yeah, and we started the account in August of last year, so the account isn't even a year old, and we've hit 10 million likes. So kudos to our
Holy
social media
cow.
team because
And you guys, you make your own content?
yep, we make our own content. We have an in-house content and creative team. We have TikTok editors. We have our own presence there. I know that sometimes other aggregators use agencies, which is also really great. But for us, it's all in-house at the moment.
You got to have that control under the thumb. You know what's going on. You have answers to questions on the spot. Yeah, having very important. And in regards to amounts, like the number one in your catalog, are you able to share? Like how much in sales is it doing?
Well,
$100 million? Are you focusing on vendor, seller? Oh, you also have direct to customer. You also have in store. So
yeah, I mean, our biggest acquisition to date, which is also I don't know if it's our biggest brand actually. I think it still is. It was Puracy. So we did announce that, and that's public information that it was around 30 million when we acquired it in sales. And our founding relationship, where we had a stable of brands, there are a couple of brands that together are crossing the like 20, $25 million mark. So we do have some pretty sizable brands in our portfolio. And but mostly staying around that size. I don't we don't have like a $100 million brand in our stable right now.
you'll get there soon. Soon.
I
Maybe I'll bring
have
you
no
on.
doubt.
So the title of this podcast was about why new product development is so crucial for success as a brand. So on that topic, what do you got to say in regards to that? I know we help our clients that we manage their portfolio. We do the product research, we find out the capabilities of their current factories, and then we see what the market is on Amazon, and then we go to them, give them what types of profits they might have, um, and then they make the decision on if these numbers take into account advertising spend and all the fees and everything, if they want to go in that direction. So, assuming you have a similar way or your own way that you've customized in house to deal with new product development. But obviously, we all know it's crucial. Can you go on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think for us, we've really realized that that's the key differentiator of how we continue to drive brand growth on Amazon. Like, if you're not thinking about it before your brand is maturing and declining, in the end, your competitors will steal share, someone from China will copy your product, or Amazon itself will produce its own version, right? And so I think we've just realized like you need to anticipate that in advance and start planning for the next product launch that will replace, your hero item, or maybe not replace, but at least like add so that your trajectory can continue going up versus flatlining. Because I think that too many people just continue to rely on like one hit product or like one hit plus a variation of a product, and aren't prepared for when things stabilize or a new entrant comes in. And so I think that the only difference I would say to our new product development is one, we are taking a very quant-based approach in terms of scanning the market for differentiating ideas, but also keeping into mind the brand. So of course, there are some people whose strategies are to like find one niche here and then another niche here and like make the products and kind of bring that together under a successful company. But unfortunately, it might not be a successful brand, because if you sell one thing in one niche and one thing in another, it doesn't mean anything to the consumer, because it doesn't tell a brand story. And so I would say that's really the how we look at product development, is within the stable of what makes sense for the brand as well, because at the end of the day, we are called branded and we are trying to build these $100 million brands.
How long does your process from when you conceptualize, I want to go in this direction, to when you make the decision, okay, we are now going to make this decision, and then design and bring it in? So from the beginning to the end, how long does it normally take to come up with a new product, or even spin off and put a new brand name on it?
Yeah, I think it definitely depends on the product. I mean, I know we can do it pretty quickly. We have those relationships to get it made. And in Q1 of this year, we launched, I think, 50 products in terms of new product launch. This year, we have a goal of around 300. Our product development team is not a team of like 100, right? Like they're a team of 12 people. And so generally, we can bring these products to market fairly fast. And again, that's one of the differentiators between us and like a big consumer goods company, right? Like we don't take a year to bring a product to market. We
Right.
take just a couple of months to bring it to market. I would say the testing time and the launch time is probably longer than the development time itself of bringing that product to market. We know that you have to give it like, a 3 to 6 month window of launch in order to understand whether that product's going to be successful or not. So that's kind of how I would balance that, is that we can actually bring products to market pretty quickly, but then the testing and the launch phase is a bit longer.
Now that testing and launch phase, 3 to 6 months, I definitely get that. But do you ever come up in situations, what would you do in these situations where you have a product, you're basically, new launch, you're in September, October, right? You're going into Q4, prime shopping season. There's no reviews on this product. There's zero. You're starting from no ranking. What would you do in that type of situation? Would you hold the inventory to give it the proper launch, and you're not going to be spending out the gate on advertising and wasting money? What would you do in that type of scenario?
I think you'd want to look into like the seasonality of the product as well, because if it's something that you might be able to hold off on, it might make more sense to launch in January, February, or March, when you can
Right.
spend less, and spend less on giveaways and other things in order to drive those reviews and things like that. That just might make a lot more sense. Unfortunately, if your product is more seasonal and you're trying to make a specific date, then you might not have any choice. So I think there's other things you can do
Right.
in terms of drumming up support and drumming up review velocity, and like all of those other tips in terms of the community, and doing giveaways and making sure that people are actually leaving the reviews up front. And I think that's the other thing, is that as a bigger company, we just have access to more customer data and customer emails and things like that. There's a lot of privacy challenges that people are running up against, and that does enable us to have a built-in community base a little bit, for some of the launches that we're doing and some of the products we're testing and the brands that we're building, because we own those customer information.
Maybe there's some type of tips we can give to listeners. So with that new product development, you get it, you launch it. Proper launch, not just in regards to time. What are the different steps, like you were saying, in regards to giveaways, or to get reviews, or maybe it's social? What different types of tools do you have in your arsenal to launch a product?
Yeah, I mean, I'd love to hand all of those like details out. I'm actually not on our operations team for launch, and so I'm definitely not the right person to go into all the details for like hacks and tips and tricks for launch, other than, the more that you can build your community for testing. I know even people have Facebook groups, for example, for their brands, where you come up with product ideas and you use the community to test out, hey, would you guys be interested in this? Like, even colors or even like specific features of your new item. I know that some people have really leaned into that, and that's worked really well for them because it not only helps with ideation, but it also helps when you actually launch the product and you have a community to say, hey, I've just launched this, like check it out on Amazon, leave a review. I think, no black hat tactics here. It's really around the community that you can build in order to access the people who might be willing to leave reviews and drive that velocity from the very beginning.
And all 100% terms of service compliant.
Exactly.
And so challenger brands. So tell me about that and the rise of micro brands. Love that
Yeah,
term,
happy to.
micro brands.
I think for us, we've really gone with challenger brands. It's a concept that's been around for a while, so it's nothing new. But it's newer in the sense of e-commerce and consumer goods. And so, what we mean is that, let's say there is a new brand of toothpaste, and like you're an entrepreneur and you've brought this like amazing toothpaste product to the market. I mean, it's obviously traditionally dominated by big CPG companies. I mean, not many of us are using a brand that's outside of the top two, right? They've taken up 80-90% of the market share. And this is pretty evident in a lot of consumer good categories. You could think about razors before Harry's and things like that. And that's what we would consider our challenger brand, is actually something like Harry's or something that's really going to...
Club.
Yeah, exactly. Just kind of enter in and chip away at the market share very slowly. And it might not be just one brand who's doing that. In the example of razors, there's actually quite a few of them now. And that's what we're looking for. We're looking for kind of like those little gems that we think can really chip away at the market share. Either it's one brand or it's a couple brands within a product category. And we want to support that because we think that previously, when you were shopping at a retail store, it was all about shelf space, and you really had to convince a retailer that you could appeal to the masses in order to sell your product. And we believe that actually the inverse is true now, that you can, because you can access people within a certain niche due to targeting, internet searches, demographics, and all of these things that allow you to kind of really tailor your product messaging and product fit, you can access a niche in a way that's much, much different now with the internet that you couldn't before, which enables all of these niche brands and niche products to be successful because you can actually find all of those people to buy your product, whereas like previously there was no path for that community to come together to purchase a niche product.
And like the price sensitivity, I mean, these big consumer brands, toothpaste, okay, maybe you buy it for $2, $3 for toothpaste, but then when you get this niche company that focuses on, I mean, you might be paying like an $8, $10 for a toothpaste. Like, is there a sensitivity where, like, how far off of does a challenger brand have to be, or the furthest that they can be for there not to be much of a consumer not caring about the price difference between,
I think for us, it's always going to be about value, right? So if your consumer values the difference enough to pay $8 for the toothpaste, if you've really convinced them that the benefit is there and it fits their needs and it cures cavities without going to the dentist, right? I think that you might find that someone might be willing to pay $8 for that brand of toothpaste. I think it'll differ by category. And of course, we're not starting to charge luxury prices for this, right? But in terms of real price sensitivity, yes, we've seen that because you drive brand loyalty, because you drive repeat purchases, potentially a better experience than some other brands that are out there or some other services, you're able to kind of capture that consumer with the marketing, with the brand story, and with the perceived value of the products that you're sending or that you're making.
Yeah, these owners of these brands have to be real careful and do a lot of research because they may wake up to some rude awakening of, I put all this money in and I didn't put the right message out there, and now it's all lost.
Right.
So I mean, that's where they might need to turn to you at some point. Is I need your help. Turn me around. Here, it's a great idea. Here, Brandon, please take this off my hands and make it a success.
Yeah. Actually, we've looked into some things like prototypes or other things. I know we mostly talked about acquisitions of like fully fledged brands, but that's a space that I think is really interesting to explore as well. People who have prototypes who might not have the right experience to bring something to market. And to be honest, I don't know if you know much about our partnership with Indiegogo, the crowdfunding site.
Actually, yes. At Prosper, I was speaking with Indiegogo, and were they right next to you?
They were part of our booth, actually.
You shared the booth,
We had
exactly.
invited them.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hmm.
So yeah, we spoke with the guy from Indiegogo, with your team too.
Yeah. So honestly, like what we want to support are entrepreneurs that have really, really great product business ideas, right? Like really innovative, really cool products. They're not just private labeling something that they found on Alibaba necessarily.
Yeah,
And so for us, that's why the partnership with Indiegogo really makes sense because we're looking at this entrepreneurial community that is more about the ideation. A lot of the products are patented, they're very unique. And that fits really well with our ethos, right? We're looking for really brandable products and things that will stand the test of time in terms of building a brand. So I'm not saying that we've done this now or this is in our like short-term roadmap, but we talk with Indiegogo about like looking into those types of entrepreneurs as well, and understanding that not everybody has the full package in terms of having the product idea and the business sense to build the business. And so
correct.
right now we're looking to acquire from those who have already made it, but at some point it might fuel our new product development pipeline as well to look at people who are a bit more early stage.
I love that. That's definitely a good place to go. And I think you've touched upon. I mean, everyone's heard it, your differentiation, but I guess a lot of people it's just like they hear about it. It's a black hole. They don't really know much about it. But what would you say are? I'm not going to tell you to make disparaging marks about companies, but in regards to why is what some other aggregators doing not the right idea, and why are you going in the direction that you are going, which is the right idea? Sort of like your, I guess, your vision or your,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think it all comes down to the brand building. Like we have really just we've been stating that from the beginning, but I feel like most people have moved that direction, which highlights to me that that was the right
right
direction to be
choice.
in the first place. Because with privacy constraints for DTC and with some of the like harshening environment, if you don't have a brand story, there's no reason for someone to buy your product over a cheaper product or a knockoff version or something like that. And I think our hyper focus on understanding that and growing the community outside of Amazon, driving external traffic, looking into expansion, looking at how we can be best positioned for retail. These are all setting us up for continued growth and long-term growth. And so I would say that again, it really comes down to the operations. There are people who formed aggregator businesses that were mostly focused on financial arbitrage, and they have teams of non-operators, and that's not working, right? Like it's just not working for them. And I think that from the very beginning, we've prioritized building an operational, like a world-class operational team with people from backgrounds that, Amazon and Walmart and other P&Gs and other consumer goods companies. We have people from L'Oreal, from Estee Lauder. And so, again, because
Nike, Kate
I
Spade.
didn't want to call out myself, but thank you. We are focused on beauty and personal care. So having people from like L'Oreal and Estee Lauder and places like that, it's like we're really trying to make sure that we pull people with the expertise and we build the team for scale.
And this might be the last question. So, why are you focusing on those industries as opposed to others, product categories?
Yeah. Actually, it's a really good question that you asked. I feel like sometimes I even get questions when I talk with others on like, why did you pick hard categories like that? Because they have a lot more regulation and a lot more compliance factors. From our point of view, especially in beauty and especially in the health area, we think that the branding of these products and the brand name makes a big difference. You might not care what brand your mop is from Amazon, but I guarantee that you will care, what shampoo you're using, what you're ingesting as well. It just becomes much more important and easier to drive more customer loyalty, more
Return.
retention, and the return rate, because the lifetime value goes up when you're able to get people to either repeat purchase or kind of expand within your portfolio. So I would say that's the biggest reason for us to strategically move in that direction.
But I mean, in regard, you would be able to do the same, maybe with apparel or something like that. But I guess it might be too fashiony, and it's all
Mm-hmm.
about the designers, and it's not something that you can sort of people can leave. And if the designer goes, the designs go with it.
Right,
So
right.
that might have something to do, because I know I spoke with you guys about different apparel brands, and there wasn't really much interest. However, there was one, because it was a niche within apparel. It wasn't really about the designs; it was about the utilitarian use of the product.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I hope you guys grow tenfold soon. If there's any closing remarks, by all means, go right now.
Sure. No, I think like if anyone is interested in getting in touch, obviously I'm available on LinkedIn, or you can contact us via our website. We are really always looking for really passionate founders, great brands with really great products, and people who have the ambition to be the next household name in consumer goods. So feel free to get in touch. Thank you so much for having me, Robert.
Anytime. I do appreciate jumping on early this morning. So we're going to be signing off now. Robert from Breetly, Katherine from Branded. We appreciate you taking the time. 46-minute mark. Have a great weekend ahead. See you next week. Bye-bye.
Bye.